All right. Well, welcome. Thanks for clicking on the link to see the recording of the Sea Grant webinar for prospective PIs for the 2022-24 request for proposals for the Wisconsin Sea Grant program. We had some difficulty with the audio portion of the recording of the original webinar, so I'm going through the webinar one more time, recording it for folks that couldn't make it live. And just wanted to welcome you. Thanks for your interest. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. My name is Jennifer Hawkswell, and I'm the Associate Director at Wisconsin Sea Grant. Just on the cover here, we're talking today about the request for proposals for 2022-24. There's a picture of the RFP, just the cover of it here, and that's available, including other materials at seagrant.wisc.edu/RFP. Before we go too far, I did want to do a land acknowledgement. The University of Wisconsin-Madison, which is the administrative home for Wisconsin Sea Grant, occupies ancestral Ho-Chunk land, a place their nation has called Teejop since time immemorial. In an 1832 treaty, the Ho-Chunk were forced to cede this territory. Decades of ethnic cleansing followed when both the federal and state government repeatedly but unsuccessfully fought to forcibly remove the Ho-Chunk from Wisconsin. This history of colonization informs our shared future of collaboration and innovation, and today UW-Madison respects the inherent sovereignty of the Ho-Chunk Nation, along with the 11 other First Nations of Wisconsin. All right, so just an idea of what the agenda is today. We've got just sort of an overview. Then I'll go over research and education priorities, outreach and engagement, just a discussion about that, and some more details about submission and our submission system, eDrop. And then I'll go over the questions that came up in the chat for the webinar, but if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And I do include just a copy of our mission here below. We promote the sustainable use of Great Lakes resources through research, education, and outreach. So that you'll see that our RFP really kind of flows from that strategic plan. So what we're looking for today, we're really grateful you're interested in participating in this competition, or at least learning a little bit more about this, because we really do rely on the best ideas of the researchers and educators around the state to bring our mission to life. So thanks for your interest. We wanted to acknowledge that we are all moving forward in the context of a changing world. The pandemic has really changed how we do business on universities, how we interact with stakeholders, how we conduct research, every aspect of both our work and personal lives, and we acknowledge those challenges and commit to working with our research community and the stakeholders we serve as we move forward through uncertain times. We also wanted to reflect on the huge, changes and, more voices and passion and energy and heartache and work that we all need to do related to issues of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion that we've seen over the last year and history in our nation. You'll see these values reflected within our strategic plan as well. We really are working hard within our own Wisconsin Sea Grant program with staff and how we do our business, but we also, a big part of what we do is support research. All of these ideals we intend to carry forward through this RFP, and you'll see that come up in our research and education priorities. And just in general, we want to reiterate sort of big picture, overarching goals and values that in addition to the ideals of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, we really work hard to support students. They're our future. We hope that these proposals, where they are able, especially for the research proposals, especially important, that there's a component that's supporting students in the proposals that we receive. We really also like students to get that opportunity that's sort of unique to Sea Grant, where a lot of the work tends to be maybe a little more applied, although basic research is still welcome as well, but we like to see where research projects work at that interface of science, but also making sure there's a connection with a stakeholder group or somebody who would have an interest in the work and where that work might inform decisions or help a community in some way. It's great if students get an opportunity to do their work at that interface. We think that that could help them become more impactful scientists if they're interested in future applied work. And then we strongly encourage proposals that engage stakeholders and end users throughout all phases of a research study, starting now. So we really encourage you to reach out to stakeholders or communities you might want to work with to, even identify the question that you might pursue, making sure that it's something that they value. And then we also encourage you to connect with our outreach and communication staff. They can help connect you with relevant audiences and also give you ideas on, that outreach component that's so important to us. So just an overview, we anticipate about 1.2 million a year for new and continuing projects. And what that translates into for this competition is about 12 to 16 new proposals that we sort of see on average. This RFP is responsive to, as I said, our strategic plan. We worked pretty hard to get outreach or to get updates and reach out to stakeholders as we updated our strategic plan this last year. And so those updates are reflected in the RFP. And as we said, we strongly encourage you to reach out now to stakeholders as you develop your pre-proposals. There will be a separate aquaculture national competition in 2021. And then just in terms of eligibility, the overview here, this competition is open to those that have principal investigator status at a Wisconsin college or university. And you certainly are encouraged and may partner with others as well. Sea Grant staff can serve as associate investigators, but we need to make sure that no funding to Sea Grant comes as a result of a funded proposal in this competition. This is our opportunity to give funding out. If we have staff whose time is valuable and has maybe is value added for your proposal, and you work with them and your proposal aligns with their work plan and as they're doing their work for Sea Grant, they can certainly participate as an associate investigator if it makes sense. But yeah, again, not as a principal investigator and no funding. This is completely optional. It's, this is not something that is required or necessarily common. It's just a question that occasionally comes up. So we wanted to address it early on. This just shows the process and timeline, and this information is also on our website. So we released this RFP early November. We're here, working on the webinar today. And then pre-proposals are due January 15th. There's a process here for review, notification of PIs. All PIs will be notified of whether we encourage or not encourage a full proposal. But anybody who does submit a pre-proposal is eligible to submit a full proposal. And then we'll have a webinar for prospective PIs for the full proposal in March. The full proposals are due April 30th. We have a pretty extensive review process that involves peer reviews from outside the state. We have a technical review panel that convenes as well. We check in with our advisory council on the package we propose to move forward. And then we have to work with applicants that we intend to fund to finalize our submission. We have to submit the omnibus package to the National Sea Grant Office in late October. And this is all a long process that leads up to finally in February 1st of 2022, a new project beginning. We're pretty excited about the priorities we have in the RFP. This is just sort of a big picture look at the priorities. We have some targeted focus areas that I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. These are capped at $120K per year for 2 years. Same funding amount for the base focus areas that we list. Excuse me. And then we have a special joint call. This is a different cap. It's $100K per year. Times 3 separate Sea Grant programs. So Wisconsin researcher would be eligible for $100K per year. So would a Minnesota researcher, and so would an Ohio researcher. And this is focused on harmful algal blooms. and nuisance algal blooms as well. And then we have one other category of project in our RFP package here, environmental literacy and workforce development. And those are education, non-research projects capped at $25,000 per year. And Ann Mosier is our lead on those. So just a little bit more on the RFP priorities. We are always really excited to put these package of priorities together, and doing targeted focus areas is something relatively new. This is our third cycle that we're, doing pulling out a few things that we call targeted focus areas. And we're really excited about this particular one. As I said earlier, our staff and team have been working hard within our program to work through and do some of the work that it takes to be better in terms of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. But we thought, our research investments are a big part of our program. And is there some way we can engage the researchers that we work with to also take on, and submit their best ideas for how we can all improve in this area. We know that many of our researchers are passionate about this topic, that they might have more creative ideas than we've come up with. And we've learned throughout this time that talking and bouncing ideas off of each other, and there's a lot of hard work that takes a lot of time, but also some creativity that can really kind of push things forward as well. And so that's what we're looking for here. We're looking for research proposals that advance issues around environmental justice for the state's underserved and underrepresented coastal communities. Our staff brainstormed topics that certainly could be relevant in this targeted focus area, and they're pretty broad, but we're not limited to these topics that are listed here. So take a look, if you're in your work that you do, if there's an element of justice, equity, diversity, inclusion that you think you'd really like to pursue and would fit within this RFP, please, submit your idea to us. And there's more on page 12 of the RFP for this particular target. We have a target that we continued from last cycle on emerging contaminants. We know this is an important issue for the state. We are just getting underway on the work that it takes to even begin to understand distribution, fate, transport, remediation of PFAS. And so we have a target on emerging contaminants that includes both per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, as well as microplastics. And so you'll see we seek proposals in this emerging contaminant category targeted focus area. We want to develop or improve methodologies, standards of procedures, models or management plans, looking at source, transport, fate, and distribution, looking at areas of concern or special concern, looking at interactions with fish populations and impacts on food webs, and also supporting and improving just testing capacity within the state, which is something that's advancing pretty quickly. So more detail on this topic is on page 12 to 13 of the RFP. Then we have a focus area, base focus area that's carried through for several cycles now, and that's the same for the next few things I'll talk about. But healthy coastal ecosystems, this is a very broad focus area. As I said, we did the work in our strategic plan to identify specific Wisconsin healthy coastal ecosystem research priorities. Those are all listed here. I won't go through them, but just so you kind of get if you skim through, just get an idea of the types of things that are important for us that we've outlined. One thing I do want to mention, and this will carry through, again, everything that I cover, is that not only are we interested in natural sciences projects, we're also very interested in social sciences research and engaging with the social science research community throughout the state. We have a long tradition of supporting natural sciences projects, and a growing tradition of supporting social sciences projects. And I think one of the limitations there is just in getting people to apply and be aware of our funding source. So more detail on healthy coastal ecosystem priorities take a look at page 14 to 15 of the RFP if you think your work would fit in this category. And I should mention a lot of proposals fit in multiple categories. Just don't get too caught up in that. Then we have priorities on another base focus area called sustainable fisheries and aquaculture. You can see more detail on these proposals on page 15 to 17. Also want to mention, again, natural science work, but also social sciences work as well, important here. And the same with resilient communities and economies. And there's more on these priorities on page 17 to 18 of the RFP. All right, I mentioned this joint call for proposals that we're doing. We're really excited about this. We've done several joint calls in the past, but we haven't teamed up in this combination of programs before with Ohio and Minnesota and Wisconsin. And this one is focused on factors contributing to and nutrient source identification of harmful and nuisance algal blooms. And the idea of doing a joint call together is that we think by working together, we can support larger scale projects, tackle challenges at a regional scale, but we also want to encourage collaboration across state lines. We think that will enrich our own in-state capacity to deal with these challenges. But we also think, collectively as researchers develop relationships across state lines that, they may become even more competitive for federal dollars as well over the longer term. So that's sort of the big picture on this particular topic. For details on the specifics of the topic, see pages 21 to 22 of the RFP. We need investigator teams that have investigators from each of the 3 states to be involved. And what you do if you find a team member in all 3 states, we want you to submit one pre-proposal document, just one way, to Wisconsin Sea Grant via our eDrop online proposal submission system. So again, like one team, one proposal. We all the 3 state programs agreed it would be submitted one way to Wisconsin Sea Grant, and then we'll collect the proposal, and then we'll share it with the other state programs as we figure out how to move forward together and do the review process. So we want to make that pretty simple to you. And then in terms of budget questions, all of the state programs are a little different. Minnesota requires match, and so does Ohio. Definitely reach out to, if you're Minnesota or Ohio PI, reach out to your state as you're developing your budget. Wisconsin doesn't require match. And then because it's really important for the way the 3 state programs will administer this joint call is we'll do it individually. It's one proposal. We want integration. We want teams to be working together. It's one big project, but we will administer the budget separately. That's kind of the way we're set up to function. So that's how we're looking at this. So for our planning purposes, we need you to submit one pre-proposal, but clearly articulate in your budgets which portion is for which state. And we did do a webinar specifically on this topic earlier today. There was really good discussion from the Sea Grant staff and really good questions that prompted more discussion about the needs and the priorities. So in addition to the RFP, there is also going to be a webinar. Well, it was recorded. We have to do a little bit of editing and closed captioning, and it will be available at seagrant.wisc.edu/RFP in the next week or so. One more thing, we know it's difficult to just sort of find potential collaborators in other states. 2 things, to add your name to a Google list of potential collaborators. This is completely voluntary. You don't have to do this, but if you're interested, just send me an email. And the other thing, if you just really are curious about potential collaborators in Wisconsin, feel free to reach out to me or our Sea Grant director, Jim Hurley. Will be happy to sort of brainstorm with you who we funded in this space before, and maybe have some idea of who's doing what based on what you're looking for. At least we can be a starting point for also coming up with potential collaborators for you. And the same would hold for the other contacts in the other state. All right, and then Ann Mosier Our education lead she's coordinating our environmental literacy and workforce development based focus area. These are education proposals at 25,000 per year. And it's got its own separate panel. She emphasizes again that lens of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. It's not just for that one research target area that I mentioned. It's woven throughout our whole RFP. So all of these other areas that we're talking about, as well as this last education project, we think there are opportunities for that kind of work, especially, and wanted to emphasize that in these education projects. But we've got the education projects listed here, and you can see more on those on page 19 to 20 of the RFP. All right, and just in terms of improving your outreach or impact of your project, as I mentioned earlier, this is something that's just very important to Sea Grant. It's something maybe a little unique to Sea Grant in terms of different funding options out there. So we are really encouraging you to work with end users of your work throughout all phases, including now. Where appropriate, consider partnerships between natural science, social science, and policy researchers. There can be some really interesting ways of exploration with those kind of partnerships. You can think of creative ways to share your work. Arts and storytelling are maybe one way to think about connecting with diverse audiences, but there are a lot of other ways to think about it too. We do have a resource page on actionable science that you can click on, and there's a toolkit there that has over 70 organizations, examples, books, and articles that explore this interface between science and stakeholders, science and society, and doing science that maybe has a greater likelihood of having an impact. And then as we said, work with our outreach and communication staff. They're happy to discuss ideas, help you make connections, and also, as you're doing your work, tell your story. And our staff directory is on our website, but if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. All right, in terms of guidelines, investigators must submit the pre-proposals by the deadline via our online submission system, eDrop. This deadline is hardwired, so it's got to be in on time. I can't emphasize that enough, by January 15th, and it's got to be by 3 p.m. Central Time. Because it's hardwired, we don't have any flexibility here in accepting late pre-proposals. So I really encourage you to not wait until the last minute. Also to check out our eDrop system before the day it's due, just to make sure everything's working for you. We'll be on hand to troubleshoot any technical problems you might have or any questions you might have. But having a little leeway is really helpful if there are any issues that come up. They don't come up often, but just for peace of mind for everybody, check out our eDrop system maybe a week or so before the deadline, just to make sure you're familiar with it and you know kind of what's involved. It's very straightforward, but again, just give yourself some time there. And then we have step-by-step instructions for what you need to do to put together your pre-proposal. This is on page 5 to 7 of the RFP. Couple things. We have a couple documents to download. There's a pre-proposal description template and also an investigator CV template. Filling those out ahead of time will really make this eDrop step pretty straightforward and quick for you. It'll also, if any technical issues come up, it'll save you from losing material. So start there, and then basically you copy and paste or upload things that you enter into those templates straight into eDrop. Here are the kinds of things that you need to have ready that are in this pre-proposal description piece, which is a title and some investigator information, begin and end dates, a financial contact for your university, which focus area or target area or specific program priority you're addressing, the statement of the problem or opportunity, overall project goals, objectives, or hypotheses that you might be testing, approach. We have a section on potential impacts, and then the budget and justification. And you don't have to upload everything or complete your submission all in one sitting. You can definitely start it, save it, and then return to it later before the deadline. But definitely want to emphasize using that save button in eDrop. If you log out, before you log out, make sure you save everything or it'll get lost. And also, this is not so intuitive to me, but as you tab between sections in eDrop that you're entering, before you hit the next button, you need to save or you lose things too. So just want to give you a heads up on that. So frequently save. And also there is a thing with word limits. If you exceed word limits, the saves won't be successful. So then the last thing is that your pre-proposal is not officially submitted until you hit the actual submit button. This is really important. And we have had proposals sometimes get hung up at that stage. And, again, if everything's sort of done far enough in advance, we notice those things and we might make a phone call to say, hey, did you mean to, were you not submitting or did you just forget to hit the button? And we're happy to do those kinds of things, but it's helpful if there's some lead time. All right, and then this is just what our online submission system looks like. And it does require Firefox or Chrome, and it is open now, and it's accepting pre-proposals. And our web lead is Tom Zhang. He and I both really in the week, months before the due dates are watching our emails. We really prioritize being responsive to PIs who have questions about their submission and the work that they're doing for their pre-proposals. We really prioritize those questions and we try to get back with you within hours, hopefully, sometimes minutes. But just again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. There is a login step for people who have used eDrop before. If you haven't used it before, there's a registration step that does require like a two-factor verification. You'll get an email and then also a code on a phone as well that needs to be entered to get you registered. And then once you're in, it's very straightforward, but let us know if you have any questions. This just lists the evaluation criteria. This is on page 4 of the RFP. So we're looking for importance or relevance for the state and responsiveness to the priorities we list in the RFP. Scientific merit is really important on the research proposals. These can be very competitive, and we have a lot of talent throughout the state. So that scientific merit piece is a really important piece for us. Also, we consider qualifications of the investigators, likely outcomes or impacts, and this has become an increasingly important piece, and actually a piece that more and more is kind of prioritizing a lot of very strong research proposals, but which ones rise to the top are the ones that are very strong scientifically, but then also have a strong outcome or impact section. We look also at budget and value. And then for the joint calls, we also focus on the regional importance of the work and also how well the team is integrated. And then the education panel looks at rationale and methods. It looks at how the proposal meets Sea Grant priorities, also impact, and then budget and value. If you're new to Sea Grant, this might just be a helpful resource for you to see what sorts of things we have funded in the past or currently. And so this lists our current and research and education projects across our different focus areas for Sea Grant. Here's the website for this, but then just kind of listed under the different focus areas that we're currently supporting the topics of the proposals that we're currently supporting. But this booklet has all of the people that we're funding, and it also has the title of the research project and the abstract, so you can kind of see what types of things we funded. I just wanted to mention we have a very active fellowship program. This is separate from the RFP, but just a plug for this fellowship program and mostly just an encouragement for you to make your students aware of some of the opportunities we might have available for them. There are some really interesting federal opportunities. One's open right now, the Sea Grant Knaus Fellowship. We also have some state opportunities. I think another Keeler Sea Grant Fellowship will be coming soon. That might be a partnership between Department of Health and Sea Grant focused on flooding. That would put a recent graduate of either a PhD or master's program at the state agency for a year to focus on that issue. It's a really great training experience. And then we also have a new partnership with the EPA lab in Duluth. A lot of the work there, we've been focusing on toxicology and a lot of PFAS work as well, but some interesting postdoc opportunities through that fellowship. So if you're interested in these kinds of fellowships, just let me know. You can reach out to me directly, or we have a subscription method for our notification list on the cover of the Sea Grant RFP of the webinar that you're attending right now. So if you want to join our notification list for RFPs or fellowships or other Sea Grant funding opportunities, just you can join that list, and we email all of these opportunities out via that list. All right, and then in terms of questions, if you have questions, follow up with me anytime. I did want to share some of the questions that came up in the chat in the webinar, and they're just listed here. So one question was, this is a good one. Do you suggest writing pre-proposals for a post-COVID world? In other words, can we assume in-person research activities or events will be possible? And our response was that we we're all working through this, a month at a time at this point. These proposals would start in February of 2022. And so we're really hopeful that that we all can plan for at least hopefully a much more active research endeavor and education options than we have right now, at least in terms of in-person work. So we encourage you to, kind of think about maybe more normal times, but, we'll all take it, like I said, 1 month at a time. And once the time comes, if we're still pretty challenged with what we can do and not do, we'll work our best to help our researchers and educators adapt. We're doing that currently now as well. But it's not a bad idea to kind of think about it and have maybe a plan B in mind if you are limited when the time comes. Do pre-proposal submissions receive feedback? And the answer is yes, we do provide feedback. We have panels that review these pre-proposal submissions, and we provide feedback to everybody. And then to clarify, is there no requirement of a match with the budget? That is true for Wisconsin. On those joint calls, other states do have a match requirement, but Wisconsin's really fortunate in that our match is covered by UW system. So there is no match required for Wisconsin PIs. And then again, if you're interested in eDrop and would like us to do a demo with you, we're happy to do that. Just send me an email. And so I've got my email address listed here. I've got the link for our staff directory as well. And don't hesitate. I really thank you for your interest, and happy to help you in any way that I can. And same for our staff in bringing your best ideas forward and to help us just address those challenges that we lay out for the state of Wisconsin and Wisconsin's communities. Thanks so much.